Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you, my beautiful pen friends, and welcome back to another review with your host, Andrew. Today, you join me for a very special review on this pen here. And why is this so special? Well, let's roll the titles and find out why. Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this pen is finally here. Now, I understand that this probably is pretty much unknown to anyone outside of the Fountain Pens UK Facebook group, but anyone who is a member will be probably very, very excited to see this pen. Now, there was a Zoom call last month talking about this pen, and there was some videos, but Leonardo very kindly has loaned me this pen, and yeah, I have to say I absolutely love it. Now, what we'll do to start with, we are going to give you a little bit of background about the Fountain Pens UK Facebook group and its conception, and then I'll provide you with some dimensions, an overview, a writing sample, and then my final thoughts and feelings. Right, so the Fountain Pens UK Facebook group. Now feel free to skip this section if this is too boring for you, or if you are a member and you already know the amazing place it is. But for those which are interested in joining, essentially, it's run by a gentleman called Bernardo Gomez, and there are various moderators on there which change from time to time, and it's a really beautiful community. Over the Christmas periods, we did 12 days of fountain pens, and there were various guests on there, which was organised by Bernardo, and it was a real good fun time. Obviously with lockdown we couldn't really do a huge amount in terms of socialising and mixing with other people, so Bernardo very kindly donated a lot of his time to actually start thinking about how to make the community a more vibrant place, and doing this Zoom call was absolutely fantastic. We had nibsmiths on there, we had illustrators, we had myself, and we had various other people on there talking about the wonderful world of fountain pens. So yeah, it was an absolutely fantastic time. And Bernardo is the kind of guy which has always had a lot of time for a lot of people. He's now started he's actually set up a charity, or in the process of setting up a charity. He's done a little fundraising event over the last few months, which has basically provided ink and fountain pens for various primary schools around the country, just to try and encourage, handwriting, which is unfortunately something which is, sad to say, a bit of a dying breed, which is a bit of a shame. But hopefully the invigoration of Bernardo will help encourage young students of tomorrow to pick up a fountain pen and enjoy it. Now, the Fountain Pen UK's Facebook group has also done collaborations with Diamine over the years. Various inks have been done in collaboration, and this year something very special is going to be dropping. I have got a sample bottle of this. It's not in its final presentation, but it's called Teal. Now, Teal is a very special ink. It's the first time that Diamine's done a pigment ink, and I have to say, on Tomoe River, you're going to have a lot of fun with this ink. And Nick Stewart, if you're watching this video, you've already sampled it, and I can't wait to see what else you do with this ink, because your illustrations, sir, are absolutely fantastic. Right, so that is the UK Fountain Pens Facebook group. On to the pen itself. Okay, so the pen. The Teal was designed by Bernardo Gomez. It was made by John Graham, and John Graham is a really fantastic, humble guy. He basically does these pens as a hobby. So to be producing 88 I think it is, 88 of these pens, it's a lot of time and a lot of energy to spend on a particular fountain pen, especially if it's your hobby. Each month, John Graham produces up to about a dozen pens, and then he posts them onto the Fountain Pens UK Facebook group at an incredibly reasonable price. And considering the work and effort which goes into these pens, yeah, I think the price which you pay for one of these pens is actually very reasonable. Now, the price for this pen is going to be a bit more significant than that of the other pens which John produces. That's primarily because there's been a lot more components going into this. So the next person which we have to thank is Phil Dart of Beaufort Ink. He has basically provided the boxes and the nibs for the pens. And then these nibs have then gone off to a gentleman called Ben Walsh. Ben Walsh is of Gravitas Pens, and you may have seen his pens floating around on the internet. Most recently, they've had quite a lot of publicity on places like Fig Boot on Pens and various other channels. So yeah, absolutely fantastic work on that behalf. So you'll have from Ben a laser engraved nib. It won't read Bock, so that's something to look forward to. Once they've been laser engraved, they're going to go to a gentleman called, I have to check on his name, sorry, Noah Maserani. I do apologise if I've butchered your name. It's not a pronunciation which I'm used to doing on a day-to-day basis. So Noah is a really good nibsmith. Absolutely fantastic work. He will be tuning these nibs individually, all 88 of them, and he will, if you do wish to buy this pen, and I'll talk a bit more about the buying process of this shortly, he will then not only tune it, but he will also put on any sort of custom grinds you might want, whether it's left oblique, cursive italic, anything you want. He might even do stacked nibs. If you do a stacked nib, it won't come with a laser engraving, unfortunately, but then you will end up with a stacked nib, which would look absolutely fantastic. Being a Bock nib, if you don't like the laser engraved nib and you want to have something like a gold nib, you have also got that option as well. Now, another person to thank is Anne Steele. Anne Steele will be producing the pen kimonos or the pen sleeves for these pens, and that should really tie off the actual presentation for that. I don't think there's anyone else to thank. So yeah, I think we've got everyone. Fantastic. Okay, so I just had to check. I really didn't want to miss anyone out. Okay, so how do you buy one of these pens? Okay, well, that's a good question. First of all, you have to be a member of the Phantom Pens UK Facebook group. I'll put that into a description down below. And you then have to join a sort of like a waiting queue lottery. There aren't a huge amount of these pens, there's 88 of them, and there's around about 2,000 members on the Phantom Pens UK Facebook group. So if you do want to have a chance of owning this pen, you do have to put your name down on a waiting list, and then your name will be pulled out at random. So at the time of this recording, feel free to actually go over to the Phantom Pens UK Facebook group, join up. It's very inclusive. There are members around the world, as I've said, and you could stand yourself a chance of winning and owning this pen. Now, when I say winning, you do have to pay for it, okay? You're just winning it from the point of view that it is a lottery. Not even I will stand a chance of necessarily owning this pen. So there we go. There's no favoritism to anyone. Right, on to the review itself. Okay, so before we crack on with the actual overview for this pen, what we'll do is we're going to put up the size dimensions for this pen. Fantastic. Okay, so let's talk about this. Okay, so this pen has been designed with a Japanese influence in mind. It's a very simplistic design. We've got this lovely tapered bottom here with the finials, and we've got this really, really interesting metallic sort of finish on here. Well, when I say metallic, you do get sparkles. It's not completely metallic. It's very subtle, and we've got these lovely teals to these reds, and the transition is really, really nice. I feel like if it had been just a plain teal pen, it wouldn't necessarily have the same sort of luster, the same sort of interest, and I think having this red really does help break up the actual uniformity of the pen. Now, I did see the original Ebonite model, and I have to say that I really like the Ebonite model as well, and maybe going down the line, if Bernardo considers doing more collaborations, perhaps an Ebonite version similar to this would look really interesting as well. Now, obviously getting Ebonite in teal and red may be a little bit more tricky, but we'll see, we'll see. Maybe some maquillage work down the line as well might be quite fun on this as well, but I jumped the gun. Okay, so on the top we've got a more pronounced finial, and it's really, really classical and very, very beautiful. It's not sharp, it's just really, really subtle, and it's not too overly done. There's some pens where they just like jut out a little bit too much, and it's not very tasteful. Having said that, it is reflected on the bottom, but it's a lot less noticeable. Okay, so let's take off the actual cap. Turns off in actually a very quick succession. So 1, 2, about 2 turns. 1.5 to 2 turns. So underneath we have got a box steel nib with a plastic feed, a very comfortable section. It's just a straight section and it tapers up ever so slightly coming up towards the nib. There are threads on here, but they're very shallow and they don't impede on any comfort whatsoever. Absolutely fantastic. Underneath we have got the cartridge converter, which is very functional, and then you've got both font ink on there, and I believe these are standard K5 converters. Okay, so what we'll do now is we're going to head over to doing a writing sample, then we'll do a size comparison, and then I'll give you my final thoughts and feelings on this pen. Right, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. We've got Teal Breaker. Okay, let's get that written up to start with. And this, I believe, is a extra fine nib on here. Or it might be a fine. I'll have to clarify that, but I believe it's an extra fine nib from Bock, and it's a really juicy nib, this. So, as by default, it comes with a steel nib. But you also have options for gold as well, should you choose to do so. The ink is diamine. Yeah, so we've got diamine Teal Breaker, lovely. And it's a really lovely ink. I will do a separate review on the ink itself, and I will do that on a variety of different papers. Okay, let's write out the quick brown fox very quickly. And I'm writing this out relatively quickly, and it's having no problems keeping up whatsoever. Okay, right, let's see if there's any expression in here whatsoever. So, no pressure, a little bit of pressure, and you can see that you're getting some shading from this lovely ink. So that's not going to really give you anything over a gold or a titanium nib in terms of flexibility, but it's expressional, and certainly having tried this on Tomoe River paper in the past, you can see some purples in here as well, which is really interesting. Now the paper which I'm doing this on today is Rhodia. I like to try and do my reviews consistently on Rhodia these days, just purely because if there's any problems with the nib, it will actually highlight it. Okay, so yeah, overall I really like this pen. Now let's have a look and see if it will actually reverse right. And it's very smooth. Now, I'm not going to go too much further on this writing sample today, because if you do opt to get this pen, you can obviously choose, as I said, from Noah to get different grinds on here. But this gives you a little bit of an overview of potentially what this looks like. Now, before we do go on, I will give you a wetness test, should you choose to actually get this nib. And it's relatively dry, which is nice. Being a pigmented ink, I don't know whether it has any effect on it at all, but it's still very nice. Right, so that's the writing sample. Now let's move over to doing a size comparison, and then I'll give you my final thoughts and feelings on this pen. Right, ladies and gentlemen, so starting from left to right, we have got the Teal Breaker, then we have got the Leonardo Officina Italiano Momento Zero Grande, then we have got the TWSBI Go, and then we have got a Pelican M600, and they are all absolutely gorgeous pens. And as you can see, the Teal Breaker, certainly in its full dimensions, is actually a reasonable sized pen. It's not that much smaller than a Grande, but let's get this uncapped and then have a look and see what they're like in comparison uncapped. So let's put Teal breaker back down here. And as you can see, actually, when they're all uncapped, they're not actually a huge amount of difference between any of these pens. So it's quite interesting that the actual length of the pen is very similar to the Momento Zero Grande, which I find quite surprising. And then you've got the Twisby Go here, which is a little bit shorter by a few millimeters. And then the Pelican M600 comes in very, very closely to that Twisby Go. So yeah, quite interesting to see how those actually shape up comparatively uncapped. So now over to my final thoughts and feelings on the pen itself. Right then, so my overall thoughts and feelings on this pen. Okay, so let's talk about some positive and negatives, because there's always going to be something which could be improved. That is the nature of design. Now, it is a plain pen, and as much as I like this, we have to also take into consideration there are people which like to have a little bit more bling. If you like a pen which has got a bit more bling on it, you like to have more sort of trim, this isn't going to be the pen for you, I'm afraid. But if you like simplicity and ergonomics, then this is definitely something you should consider. One other thing which I will note is that although you can post the pen, it does make it into an exceedingly long pen. If I hold it like this, whilst it does post, it does backweight the pen just a smidge, just a smidge. If you've got bigger hands, that might not necessarily be too much of a problem, and in fact it might be a benefit. The diameter of the pen will actually provide you a little bit of comfort with larger hands, but perhaps had this been a little bit more tapered, this could have posted a little bit more deeper. But considering this is the first pen, which I believe has been done in collaboration with John and Bernardo, I have to say this is a really good execution. The colours were custom done. The transitions are absolutely fantastic between the reds and the teals. And I just really love the simplicity of this. Now, it's not going to be for everyone. As I say, there are some people which just don't get on well with acrylic pens and like a little bit more excitement on a pen. That's the wonderful thing about the Phantom pen world, really, isn't it? There is a pen for everyone, and this definitely sits in a category for people which loves that simplicity. So that's it really for today's video. Overall, just to say, I should say, thank you so much, Bernardo, for lending me this pen for a review. I shall have it sent back to you ASAP, and I shall see you in the next video. If you enjoyed today's content, don't forget to give it a like and consider subscribing. Hit that bell notification if you would like to be alerted for future videos, and do leave a comment in the section below. Give me some thoughts and feelings on this pen. So that really is it for today's video. Until next time, stay safe and goodbye for now.